I just watched Hannibal Season 2, Episode 1, Kaiseki. And let me tell you, if you watch Season 1, this season is going to be nothing like that season. In fact, it's going to be darker, more gruesome, crazier, and we are going to be interwoven into the most psychotic webs of crazy that we have yet to see. And judging by the packet or the trailer for the rest of this season, we have our work cut out for you. So where do I begin? All right, let's get to it. Kaiseki is a some type of dish with squid, water clam, and sea urchin. Doesn't look appealing, and they were actually like, the cameras were like, you know, they were zooming in on the actual sea urchin, and it didn't look like sea urchin. Somebody on Twitter said it looked like a lady's vajayjay. I wouldn't put it past Hannibal, because Jack Crawford was just sitting there steady eating everything and just enjoying it, not questioning anything. And see, that's Hannibal again. With what I said in my Sleepy Hollow video, let me say this to you. Hannibal is again like Henry from Sleepy Hollow, hiding in plain sight. The only difference is that he has interwoven so many facts and things that no one can touch him. Everyone can see him, but no one can touch him. Only Will sees what's going on. And everyone else is kind of going with it, but they're kind of still skeptical about it. But even before we got to the food part, we see the battle royale between Hannibal and Jack Crawford. Whereas Hannibal and Jack, I mean, they go at it. They go crazy. They're stabbing each other, slicing each other, beating each other, just going on back and forth and back and forth. And all of a sudden it ends with a slice across Jack Crawford's throat, and the blood is coming out, and they tell us 12 weeks earlier. So we're seeing what happens, I guess, towards the end of the season. We get to see it early. Either way, it's sad, and it's kind of upsetting because something happens to Jack, and it worries me about Jack. So, yeah. If for those of you who don't know, Jack is played by Lawrence Fishburne. Will Graham is played by Hugh Dancy. Hannibal is played by Mads Mikkelsen. Alrighty, so Hannibal describes the squid as being a flounder of some sort. I don't even want to know what that means. I don't even want to know. Apparently, Will is about to be on death row for the deaths that happened in season 1. He has convinced himself that Hannibal has done this, which we all know Hannibal did it, but Will knows that he didn't do it, but Jack doesn't know that, and Jack is still skeptical of Will. Jack and Hannibal kind of feel a certain way about it, and they feel bad about it, which I find it hilarious that Hannibal feels bad for something that he, quote-unquote, feels bad for, something that he created. He created this situation. He only wanted to be friends with Will, but Will was peeping his whole card, and that was the end of that, so he set him up. So we finally see Will, like, he's peaceful, he's dressed in fishing clothes, and he's fishing with this green line, and then all of a sudden that crazy deer with the antlers comes towards him, and someone told me that the deer means death, so it's like death inching towards him, and all, like, covered in, like, black oil, just all coming towards him on the side. So it's like this beautiful landscape, and you see this black deer thing coming across. It's creepy. Will hears someone speaking to him, and he's zoned out. As he comes back, he realizes it's Dr. Chilton. Now, we know that Gary Oldman played Dr. Chilton in the movie. This Dr. Chilton is just as obnoxious, if not a pain in the ass, either way. And this one couldn't even keep I can't think of Eddie Izzard's character right now, but he couldn't even keep him together. Dr. Altman, I think that was his name. But anyway, he couldn't even keep on top of him, so. But he's so convinced and trying to talk to Will, and Will doesn't even want to deal with him because he's an ass, and he really is a big ass, just an ass. all of a sudden we see Cynthia Nixon, aka Miranda from Sex and the City. She is the mediator between Dr. Bloom and Jack Crawford. Now, if you recognize Dr. Bloom, I believe that's Caroline Dhavernas. I think she was in another Brian Fuller show called Wonderfalls, where she played, I guess she's Gretchen Bloom in this one, and she was Gretchen something in Wonderfalls as well. I think that's pretty awesome now. If you haven't watched Pushing Daisies, watch Pushing Daisies before I finish this. It's not as dark as Hannibal, but it's pretty awesome. Okay, she said, you have... Doctor, I'm not sure what the doctor's name is, but she said, you have wounded an Agent Crawford. Who will you think is going to get the bayonet? It's some weird, like, analogy she basically makes for Dr. Bloom writing up a paper basically about, it's like a report about Will and how she doesn't believe that Will committed those crimes, that he was being framed. But again, the FBI is kind of iffy about it. They don't even know. And they've already written him off in their book. Dr. Crawford, okay, Agent Crawford wants Bloom to pull her report about Will Travers, but she's not going to do it because, like I said, she still believes that Will didn't do it. We know he didn't do it, but we're just the outside looking in. A body pops out of the water whose skin on its face is coming up. It's like this weird yellowish, nasty, ugh. Ooh, and it's like the inside's like reddish, and it's like, oh, it's like, ugh, it looks like preserves or Smucker's jam, like, ugh. This is my take. I say Hannibal fooled everyone. Like I said, he did fool everyone because he's hiding in plain sight. He did all this stuff, killed all these people, is feeding these people these body parts, and no one's the wiser because he's the great Hannibal Lecter, so, alrighty. Will can't see himself for what he is, he tells his psychiatrist. And then Hannibal goes to go visit Will. Will knows that Hannibal killed those people, and he doesn't see him as a friend. Like, Hannibal tries to cover it up, like, you know what, we're cool or whatever. And Will's like, listen, he's like, I know what you did. I can't prove what you did, but I'm gonna get you. He basically says, I have clarity about you, Will Travers. He knows Lecter manipulated him. And then, no, in fact, Will says, I have clarity about you, Hannibal. He said he knows that he was manipulated by Hannibal Lecter, promises a reckoning when he finds out who did what. No, let me backtrack. Promises a reckoning when he finds out what Hannibal did, what exactly Hannibal did. So there's a close-up of Hannibal's tongue, and it's being swabbed with like a Q-tip, and they're trying to take cells off of his tongue. And the lab assistant, Beverly Katz, is upset about everything that happened, and she feels like she missed something, I guess, in Will, but I guess she doesn't realize that, like we know, Will didn't do this. Hannibal has become the new Will Graham, which is kind of weird, and he gets to see like all these bodies lined up because the people who find the bodies floating in the water are like 2 men, and I guess they're cleaning the dam or something, and it's like a line of bodies of different colors, but they're all the same color, like the splotchy black stuff all on their skin. It's just nasty. They claim that the bodies are well preserved, embalmed, injected with silicone, and there's a new killer obviously making human models. Hannibal gives the doctor, his psychiatrist, his consent to discuss him as a patient. I guess to wipe his hands clean of whatever's going on, but it's suspicious either way, just suspicious. Because, quote-unquote, Will made accusations, which we know he is because Will's innocent. Jack is uneasy about Hannibal. Hannibal basically put his shrink, like I said, in a precarious situation because she's going to have to tell everything that Hannibal has said to her, but that she has to be careful. I think that's what she means by being precarious. She has to be very careful about what she says and what he'll do to her because of what she says. Dr. Bloom is taking care of all of Will's dogs, but one of the dogs, Winston, keeps disappearing and going back to Will's house, which is pretty cute and pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet. She's on his side, and she thinks that he has no control over his actions. No, he doesn't. Will says that he can hear Hannibal's voice in his mind. And Dr. Chilton, like I said, is upset because Will won't talk to him. Dr. Bloom helps Will recover his memories, and somehow, like, she's talking to him and she turns into this black thing with like this Medusa black hair, and she kisses him and the oil covers him, and then she said, no matter how deeply you go, my voice will go with you. And with that, she takes her ooze and she covers him, and he wakes up at a table with some strange food with like a snake coming out of a skull's nose or something, and he's sitting across on Hannibal with an ear sitting on a plate, and Hannibal's sitting there all covered in black with those antler ears on his head, just freaky. Hannibal cooks for Dr. Frederick Chilton something quote-unquote meatless, but we know there's some type of body part somewhere. Like I said, Chilton is upset because Will won't talk to him, and sometimes he feels like a freshman fumbling with a girl's garter, just the way that he's going, and that's the way that Will describes him going into his head. I mean, that's the way Chilton feels trying to get into Will's head. I guess he stumbles over himself and it embarrasses him. Oh well. Chilton's an ass, and he won't stop talking. He just keeps talking and talking and talking. And Hannibal makes a joke that's like, again, outside looking in, hidden in plain sight. In that case, you are dining with a psychopathic murderer. Now, we would all pick it up, but Chilton is so pompous and stupid and everything else that he doesn't even hear this, because he's like, oh, he's making a joke, whatever, my colleague. He's a dummy. I don't feel sorry for him when he gets, like, his face eaten by those boars in that Hannibal movie. He kind of deserved it in that movie. There's a new killer. He's looking for a victim. He finds a young black guy on the train, and he touches his hand, tells him he has nice skin. The guy recoils like, ugh, because I'd be the same way, like, ugh, don't touch my hand. Anyway, the guy is at home, and he hears his car alarm going off, and there's like some plastic hanging out of the trunk. So he goes over to the car alarm. He turns the car alarm off. He goes over to the trunk, and he's looking at the plastic, and then this man with, like, it looks like he has longish hair and a beard, he appears, and he just walks up behind him, and he kind of, like, I guess he grabs him, but we don't see it, but I'm thinking he grabs him, puts him in the trunk, and wraps him in the plastic in the trunk. So there's a pile of bodies with oil injected to, like, in their bodies. It's like you get to see a close-up of those bodies that this killer's keeping, and it's like he takes this powder and he heats it up and he injects it, which they're saying is cocaine or crack, shoots it up in their arms, I guess, to keep them sedated or keep them satiated. Then he puts some type of plastic or watery something, some chemical on them, and he puts it on the black guy and just keeps putting it on there. Okay. Then he starts sewing up parts or something, and I'm like, what the hell is this dude doing? And I guess he seals up they were at the, I think it was it was Jack Crawford, and then it was, the different scientists, and I think it was Hannibal. Hannibal might have been there, and they said one of the scientists basically says, that the killer seals up these coked up bodies into these resin-like shells or whatever. Either way, it's just nasty and gross. And it's just, it's like taking plastic. Ugh. Beverly Katz, who is played by Hettienne Park, I believe her name is, she visits Will with a file and pictures because Jack Crawford's at a loss. He doesn't know who did this, so Dr. Katz is basically like, listen, well, getting Will's opinion, but Will assumes that she's there to see him, I guess, to be friendly, but it doesn't work that way, and his face just drops, and it's really sad. And she visits Will, brings a file, and he's like looking at it, and then he looks at all the pictures, and he realizes it's a color palette. Will, I guess he realizes what's going on, but I guess that his thing is like a color palette because it's the different people with different ethnic backgrounds, different hues, so it's like a color palette that this killer is coming up with. Will's sitting there eating his prison dinner, And I guess the after effects of Dr. Bloom hypnotizing him is like coming to fruition, whereas his mind starts drifting, and then he sees like Hannibal over him, like intubating him, like sticking a tube, like a thick tube, like this thick, down his throat, opening up his throat. Then he sticks this ear down, which must be Abigail's ear, sticks it down his throat. And then he pulls out the tube, and Will is still kind of out. I don't know if he got Will drunk. Did he give Will some type of drug? I'm not even sure what he did, but Will's just the whole time. And I'm like, wow. So that's how he did it. So when Will spits the meat out that he starts chewing, he sees the ear. He just keeps seeing this ear. I guess that's Abigail's ear. I don't know why I didn't think she's dead, but I guess she is dead now. Jack Crawford goes to Will's house. He sees Winston the dog because Dr. Bloom is watching the dog, but Winston, for whatever reason, keeps coming home waiting to see Will, and then he doesn't. Jack takes Winston inside, sits with him until Dr. Bloom comes. And he says that he understands why she had to file the report. She tells him Will is clinging to the hope that Hannibal did all those killings. And she basically tells Crawford that, listen, she says, a psychopath would not be so scared. In other words, if Will was really the killer, he wouldn't be afraid. He would just be, you know what, he would have no emotion. Hannibal. Plain and simple. Will is fishing again because he must like this fishing memory, and he sees Crawford. And then he comes back to life and realizes that Crawford is sitting across the table at him. And Will says that there was just enough evidence, I guess, that Hannibal left for him to convince you, meaning Hannibal left enough evidence to convince Jack, as in, I guess Jack was not paying attention. Jack didn't see the forest for the trees, and Hannibal saw that and took advantage of that. Will says, you let the fox into the hen house. He said, I am not the intelligent psychopath you look for. You may not believe me now, but you will. Hannibal's sitting alone. It looks like in his study, and he's just staring. He gets up, starts looking at something. Then you see the way that the episode ends is you see the bodies sitting there, laying there, and you see the black guy. He wakes up, and his hands like this, and his knees are together. He tries to move his knees, and he can't. He tries to move his hand, and then he realized that his hand is fused to his face, and his knees are fused together, and he's screaming. And as he screams, the camera pulls up, and you see like bodies around and around, like literally, like Will said, like a color palette from light to dark. A color palette, I guess, the outside of the people who died before. I started watching Hannibal last year when Hannibal was a mid-season, I guess it was a mid-season premiere, and it ran concurrently with Scandal, and every time Scandal had repeats, I was able to catch up with Scandal because Hannibal would have a repeat that same week. It worked itself out that way. I'm just so glad the fandom grew because it felt like NBC took forever to review it and to renew it, and I hope to God they renew it for season 3 because I love it. I hope they come to New York Comic Con because I literally begged this dude, please bring them next year, and he was like, well, if they come, I'm like, please. I said, you will have so many people in the room there for that if you do that. So hopefully they hear me, they listen to me, they see me, and they do it. So I'm just so excited. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, everybody. This episode was fantastic. If you haven't seen it, go see it because my description may not even do it justice. All I can say to you is have an awesome Saturday, a great, great, great weekend. And as soon as this pops up on NBC, watch it again because you watch it the first time and you're soaking it in and you're just like, oh my God, wow, wow. And then when you watch it again, you really, really soak it in. Like you start seeing stuff because that's what I had to do when I watched it. I always watched it twice. So anyway, take care, everybody. And this is Sage Valentine, aka Etherblade. Check me out on @SageValentine at Twitter.com. The Rock and Roll Sister, aka I Hope You Can Handle It at Blogger.com. And the truth is at WordPress. Love you guys. Bye.